Welcome to the Ex Terra Podcast. The Ex Terra mission is to explore and discuss the business of space and its effect on the national and global economy, as well as life on Earth. How does what happens in space affect your life every day? That's what we're exploring on the Ex Terra website, as well as on this podcast. My guest is Nino Marcantonio, founder and deputy director for the Defense Technology Innovation Program. Nino, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure is all mine.
Let's talk about your background first. How did you come to found the Defense Technology Innovation Program, or DTIP?
In 2017, I was brought into the Pentagon to do some work on a contract at the Office of the Secretary of Defense, P&R readiness under the Force Education and Training, and I was tasked to bring in innovations and look at how to modernize the current operations, the modus operandi of how we were doing innovations and how we were assessing those technologies. And we were tasked to figure out how to bring in innovation faster. So I began working across the multiple senior leadership that I had access to, and began collaborating via different future tech forums that I had identified throughout the department. Then we began working on collaborations, which turned into something called a public-private partnership. And we fast forwarded 2-3 years later, and we have compiled presentations and rapid capability assessments in person in the Pentagon, and in a virtual meeting set form, and into testing and evaluations of different types of technologies throughout the years. We brought in about 85 revolutionary concepts. Some have gone places. Some have been evaluated, have put on pause. Some have been starting to work on development and opportunities into our R&D space. We look for technologies that are on the revolutionary side, the emerging convergency of technologies that are so rapidly being discovered. We are a bridge program where we scout in the wild. So that means whatever we find through our tech advisories, which are comprised of multiple strategic alliances that we build strategically around the world. We do a lot of work Australia. We work with a lot of European, Nordic countries. U.S. of course is our main hub, but we keep a close eye on everything that is happening in the air, land, sea, and space, cyber. It's pretty broad. We do tackle a pretty big array of capabilities, but that's what we are tasked to do. And senior leadership has been buying in as of late, because we are sponsored by policy. We're partnered with policy, and policy has a big mission to help acquisition, sustainment, research, engineering, Navy, all the R&D shops around the Pentagon that like to join a forum, like to see what's happening. We can help them comparably find a technology to fit in a future requirement.
So then what's the primary function of DTIP as it relates to space?
So because space is so interrelated, right now with the 2017, there was a Space Force. Actually, my director, Thomas Van Heer, was one of the early people that was describing when he was on the Rumsfeld, working at it was the SecDef. It was one of the early founders of starting to put together why we should have a Space Force. Of course, that was a little bit early at the time in the 2004 to 6 era. You have to fast forward 10 years later, but space is interrelated to everything that we do because the technologies that are in space are directly impacting our national security. So we work extensively on propulsion systems. In fact, this morning before we came here, we did a quick scan on a technology that can revolutionary in potential in propulsion systems. So that's coming out of somebody who's been working with DARPA, and it has something that is extremely important for us to escalate to senior leadership in the near future. Oh, as far as keep talking about space, well, we don't discriminate that are actually we are building through many different types of associations and partnerships. You're getting ready for the enhancement of space economy, and this is also how we've met. Through our friends at Stellar Modal Association, that it is very important to for us as the DTIP, as the Defense Technology Innovation Program LLC, to identify technologies that are impacting the Space Force as well, because Air Force, Space Force. I mean, now, just because now they have the office that stood up, and there's a space development agency, and there's things that are directly in relation to combating the space dominance, which is really on us.
What's your evaluation criteria, Nino, for the technologies that are submitted to your program?
So we have a tech advisory about 30 plus senior executives outside of the government on the public side. So usually folks like deputies, assistants, secretaries of the Navy, usually people that have extensive background on each capability that we bring in. So how it works is, if I have, for instance, someone in artificial intelligence that has something novel, we will go ahead and gather that this is really what the DTIP does well. We will go after, we measure the innovators that are innovating, the leaders in AI. So for example, Google is a leader. We look at the people that have patents that were doing things a little bit differently than Google or that Amazon or than the NVIDIA of the world are implementing. So what we do is our strategy is to find those innovators that can innovate them, because the commercial sector has gone very fast lately, and we use that strategic knowledge and experience and expertise to come around early and assess those technologies. Then we run them through our loop through senior leadership. So we get feedback early to see if something is there interesting. We compare early, see what's happening already internally in the ecosystem of the R&D communities. And this is where really the DTIP does things differently. And when we do the presentation, that takes us about 2 to 3 months to prep up. That's where we really work closely with the company. So we optimize that presentation for that future requirement, or to enhance and leapfrog something that we already doing it. So the benchmark is faster, cheaper, better, right? So we find something you can do it faster. Not necessarily all the time you can find that, because it's usually you need to really invest in a technology that is high risk, high reward. Right now we're going towards that, but usually we can also find some new models in the improving a process and acquiring that technology. That's something that we would look at closely. The technology in itself is the technical readiness levels, and you have all sorts of readiness levels for a company. We look at that, but we unfortunately, innovation is something that is most of the time is not really pretty and packaged beautifully. You might have a guy in a garage creating the next Terminator, right. Skynet. So I always say that because we've had a couple of those guys that, wow, if this is real, the government comes back to us and say, oh my God, we need to keep a close eye on this guy. So we kind of it's also the way of surveilling and scouting, assessing what's happening in real time. We bring it in, not necessarily, we are not lobbyists, right? So what we do is we kind of show, because of the fast moving parts outside of the, inside the commercial sector, we try to bring in technologies that have a good chance to compete with the ones that we're already developing, because we might we're not saying whatever we bring in is absolutely the one to go with. We more want to just give the government a situational awareness on that technology.
DTIP is really bullish on public-private partnerships. What is the importance of those public-private partnerships for companies that are involved in space commerce?
it's actually very critical as you see that how the public-private partnership, I see it as, well, like I said, we're a very small unit. So the micro public-private partnership that we are enabling is really breaking down the barrier of identifying technologies at the speed of relevance, at the speed of when we need it. So if we identify something and we need to move on it, the public-private partnership enables us to use mechanisms which are with non-traditional partners, right? So that's really where the innovation might take place. And the way that we've been doing it for 50 years, in a way, we're still a little bit stuck. Well, we're making great progress, with our policies that are changing in acquisition, taking adaptive acquisition, frameworks into account, using the CSO, which is the commercial solutions agreements, the OTAs. Those are extremely important tools that the acquisition workforce needs to really be reskilled in, so people know actually that they have those options to bring those technologies in faster. And that can be also a service, that can be a product, that can be just changing the way that they're doing business. So it's all really, like, to me, is a team concept, having many different players working around that public-private partnership. So let's say that the DTIP works with 15 companies. Those 15 companies are linked up to another 50 companies, and they're associated with another 200 associations. So the ripple effect that I can have, it's a neural network that I create. Now I'm in a very, very good position because the Office of Secretary of Defense Policy hosts our presentations, and we have a relationship that's built in over 30 years that we've had success. And that's really what the public-private partnership is we are helping the government find these technologies faster, and we create that value by a simple doing that work with the companies outside, bringing them in. It's extremely important to multiply the effect, right? And it's really not just technologies, and it's not just space. So when you're talking about space, you're talking about Navy. It's interrelated because everything that space touches is directly impacting our lives. So yeah, there's no. I really don't see space or Navy, Air Force being any. They're integrating. We're trying to create more interoperability. Also, I've done a great job working with NASA, bringing in some of their innovations over the last couple of years that were identified as something that we could use. Stealthy quantum communication systems. New types of energy capabilities. All sorts of fantastical stuff that actually now is, as this decade, I think it's absolutely the most critical in our history of our nation, but in the history of mankind. Who gets things right now can really deter war for the future, also prevent it, and everything that comes around it. Space is going to be a huge. We call it the Wawa space, right? It's going to look like that, and what really Space Force was stood up to do is to put some order in that, because it's going to be a free for all. So there's been the tenants out there, that have come out, and there's a lot of movement around how do we deal with space debris, how do we deal with peer competitors, satellites, satcons. And it's all going to affect us in one way or the other if we don't manage it right. So it's all about mitigating space risk, and that's how I see it. The technologies are all out there, and everything is converging. So the better connected we are and understanding, and really the biggest thing for us is to really try to educate. We gather all the capabilities outside of the Pentagon that's happening really fast. Bring that knowledge inside and make really better decisions based on that knowledge.
So it sounds to me like we all know that Washington deals in silos. Everything has its own little compartment, but it sounds to me like part of what you're trying to do is break down those silos.
Exactly right. The strategy early on, we actually went over this yesterday, and we had some senior leadership come in, at the general level, at the brigadier general level, at the admiral level. They came in and spoke about, the impact. What's really important is gathering people around the table to form a coalition of the willing. So it's breaking down those barriers, which is kind of hard, right? Everybody's I call it a healthy competition. Because the way that you can be, if you understand what's happening around you at the Navy and the Army and the Air Force, make it a joint venture, a joint effort. You start to see a lot more of that happening because of, the joint all command control. We want to be integrated, working together, interoperable. That's ideally what we're trying to drive with every little, chipping away at innovation. It's not so much the innovation. It's more of changing the culture that is the hardest thing to do at the moment within any sort of government, any sort of change, right? Change is great, but change is not easy because, you have the ranks, right? So in the Pentagon, I've had the blessing to be able to befriend or showcase what my capabilities have been to senior leadership. And I just started chipping away how I can help, like chip away. This collaboration, this one, let's grab this one. Let's work together with this one. Before you know it, you have 50 organizations coming around, sending, 300 of their representatives to any given time. The exclamation point to me when I knew we were doing something right. Well, there's really a couple instances, but the one that was really a big one was, a rapid capability assessment of one technology, and we brought it into the Pentagon in 2 months through senior leadership meritation, because you have to merit the technology. You have to say, okay, next step, right? So you always got to go through that. So that can move fast in 2 months, getting 6 generals around a table with the White House, DARPA, IARPA, ODNI, leadership, DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Those guys, when you can do that, that's powerful, because it's not easy to get these people around the table. Now, regardless if we got the technology or not, you were able to merit it. And then whoever wants to work with that, somebody has to take that risk on, because the guy was very hard to deal with. So, I really wanted to move on it, right? So the senior leadership there that came, we want to work with this guy, but the guy was a nightmare to work with. So he was working with the Brits now. but here's the thing. You bring these things in and you're like, well, okay, where's the trade-off? Where's the trade-off? The trade-off is who's going to willing to, break the mold on that, right? Because, you have programs, right? PEO offices. You have people that have their careers based on a program's, schedule, cost, performance. We need to get away from that long program approach in the government, because if we don't, we the 1980s, the way that we were fighting the war against the Russians, it's totally different as China. So we need to adjust to what our peer competitors are doing, and we're doing it. And I am so blessed because I have the senior leadership that's driving that change, that is patting me on the back with bold action. The bold action is not so much what Nino's doing, it's what Nino is asking people to do by asking questions. You ask the questions and the problems, and then you get enough of these senior leaders like, oh my God, this makes sense. They need to take bold course of action. It's not me. I can't dictate it. I can only present it. I can compare it, and then they got to do what they got to do as senior leaders. So we're also, the strengthening the SES through reskilling, and we have so many projects going on. It's not just technology or space. It's really encompassing a lot of different things in the realm of what's coming. What are the trends on future exponential technologies that are converging? It's happening so fast that I can't keep up. I need a little brain machine plug-in to my head to upload me, to give me all this information. I can't keep up. You see me sharing stuff on LinkedIn. People are like, this guy's sharing, likes it. No, those things that I share and like are all developments that are happening all around us, all across the globe with my network, that are senior, revolutionary folks across the whole of government, the whole of academia, the whole of the world.
I'm talking with Nino Marcantonio, founder and deputy director of the Defense Technology Innovation Program, or DTIP. We'll talk more with Nino in just a moment, but first, why not click subscribe right now to be sure you don't miss any of our podcasts, or if you're watching on YouTube, any of the videos from Ex Terra, the Journal of Space Commerce. Nino, recently Russia tested an apparent anti-satellite weapon which forced a temporary repositioning of the International Space Station. What was the significance of that test?
Well, from what I know, the Russians are not really playing any sort of, they're doing things outside, like they're doing with everything else right now. They're always testing their limits, and they're no different in space, right? So you see it in Ukraine, you see what they're doing with the buildup. Russia is not our friend, and they've always been our and right now with this race, coming down upon us in space, is kind of a place of saying, okay, what's the U.S. gonna do about it? So it's always like a kind of a testing of where we stand and how we can encroach. China's doing the same thing in the South China Sea. So yeah, for that one, the big problem there is it's caused a huge problem of debris that those things fly at. Just imagine that a bullet flying through space, but at a velocity that's probably 200 times greater. A little piece that's maybe an inch, and those pieces just cause huge problems for satellites that are up there. And of course that problem. I have friends of mine like Dr. Moriba Jah. He's an astrodynamics expert. Works for the University of Texas. He's running their the astro programs and working with FRL for many years. He's a giant. He's dealing with that kind of stuff, which I would love for him to come and do a talk with you guys, because he's really brilliant. He'll be able to break that stuff down to, like I said, I like to surround myself with experts, and I try to be a sponge, but I have my limits, like we all do. I humbly just learn everything about everything I can. But that big problem with Russian space has been a problem that's never going to go away. So their tiny relations with China is also a problem. They're asserting themselves as they've always have, and we need to find ways to mitigate their aggressiveness in space, and to make sure that they get sanctioned for things that they're doing, because they're right now that's a big problem that they caused. But this is nothing new for Russia, right? So Putin is a bold leader. He's always challenged the United States of America, and we're here to control him. This is going to be an interesting 10 years of developments. If we have to get this right against Russia, against China, Iran, and the smaller states that they got to pick the right sides. And strategic alliances globally is going to be very, very important to accountability. I mean, it comes down to accountability. It comes down to superior excellency and deterrence of war, because we all have really, really powerful weapons. So the character of war has changed, and we are here to make sure that Armageddon doesn't happen. I mean, some of the things that we're looking at are just so disruptive, But yeah, that's a space foul. But we're not surprised with Russia.
Nino, you talk about the metaverse. Tell me what that is, and what does it mean for space commerce?
Well, imagine the internet, and then you're turning everything where you can actually go in the metaverse, which is a virtual reality. You create. So what they're doing is they're creating all these virtual worlds, and imagine creating those virtual worlds where you can buy and trade whatever you're trading on the internet, but you're having an interactive relationship with those tokens or with those people inside. So you're creating many different worlds. So reality becomes virtual reality, and becomes just like the commerce. So they're talking about the multi-trillion-dollar opportunities. It really is, because it's like it's using all the technologies that we're bringing into the Pentagon and converge them. Artificial intelligence. You got AR, VR. Internet of Things. You have the and what's the big one? The blockchain. So there's so many different types of technologies that are going to be meshing together, that you're going to be basically putting on a headset and going into just like gaming and simulations. You're going to go into another world, and that's where it's going to get tricky, because it's fun and it's very cool, but it's also, there's got to be a limit and control of that. Of course, that's going to be like a world where, hey guys, let's go to with the family, right? So instead of going to Italy, you're going to go to another universe where you're going to go in with your family. You're going to travel, and you're going on vacation to buy and shop, and that world is going to be made out for you. But people are building that world. So maybe they're building another Earth-like planet where it's going to be commercialized. So it's going to be just like traveling to that place, and it's really it's really interesting, because you're going to be in these worlds, and it's going to be so real that you're not going to know where, you might just want to stay there, and you're sitting there, you're sitting there like in your trance. You're traveling, right? You're traveling with your mind, because everything is going to be brain machine interface. So it's like we're going into the unknown. You might find, you might love it so much. You might create, some people won't be so creative, they'll create, a heaven. But what is heaven? Is heaven, I'm Catholic, and I believe in heaven and earth, right? So when you start talking about these kind of things, we start to blur the lines, like, oh, maybe I can create a paradigm shift in, creating a heaven or a hell, and to see what that would look like. But I don't know. I think it's exciting times, but it's also unknown how it's going to affect the human species.
It sounds almost like you're describing the Matrix.
Well, it is the Matrix, really. The movies that come out, they become reality, further down the line. So we're not too far off from the Matrix. Actually, there's some patents out there right now with, we have we have SpaceX and what they're doing with Neuralink. There's other companies that they're starting doing the testing on those machine interfaces, where, because we have our brain is basically a transitter, right? So all the information that comes in, it's gonna go into this new phase where, instead of having digital, the super iPhone, just the revolutionary technology in our hands, plugged in, it's going to be brain machine interface, and then it's going to go into these other AR VR worlds that really are going to be. Everything is going to change in the next 10 years. And this is one of the big things, talking about the metaverse. It's really happening. It's the Matrix. So the Matrix is more like, oh my God, it's like extra, the fighting, all that stuff, which maybe, we'll get to that, but it's more going to be like, kind of like, the gaming that's happening right now. You go in, you play, and then they're just taking that to kind of like the next level, I think. And I try to stay away with it because I'm too busy. I'm not want to go in there, but I have scientists that are going in there with their AIs, right? And they're doing trips, and they're solving problems that in the metaverse that are so far advanced that I'm like, we are, we're coming close to something very, very big. And, there's a lot of names for that. So we have to control that, because it's dangerous. And, but the universe, and right now, as we expand into space, lunar, Mars, and going into interstellar, 2030, 2040, I think between 2030 and 2040, I think everything's going to look very different. Even by 2030, things very, very, very different.
And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, I want you to talk a little bit about your involvement with the Stellar Modal Transportation Association, and how does that relate to the DTIP?
Yes. So as we were saying earlier, my blessing are my strategic alliances that I make. So when I met the Stellar Modal, I spoke to John and I got introduced to the group. They're absolutely a phenomenal group for what is going to be happening in space for their transportation and for the future economy of transportation in space. Directly related into what the DTIP does for the Pentagon is actually directly a relation with what John is doing for the space economy. We're connecting the dots. So my strengths are my associations and my strategic alliances. He's one of them. So, we work with a lot of different other groups that have specifics on certain types of, commerce capabilities, IT, agile, some are focusing on best practices for acquisition. Some are doing, energetics. Some are, doing education, reskilling. It's really so broad that the more that I can bring in, the stronger I become, because I can propose anything to the OSD policy, and then we can literally pick out our Space Force, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, ODNI, NATO, Organization of American States, our close allies. And then we can basically, the more information revolves around our allies and those groups, depending on the capability that we want to, some just, doesn't even make it out to some groups. So it's just a way of it's a marketplace where we created where senior leadership really understands what we're doing. The same thing with Stellar Modal. They can basically bring in, as I can bring opportunities with our capabilities through them. And the more that they know about what I know, and the more business and commerce that we can make with Space Force, to me, that's easy bridge into Space Force or into the Air Force, right? Because it's basically almost kind of the same thing. And all those capabilities, I think that's going to be a huge paradigm shift in how we're moving around the globe. You know, with the transportation, the times are down to, you know, within hours. You know, within you know, we could be traveling. You know, SpaceX is doing 1 hour across the world. So that's basically plugs right in. You know, NASA and FAA, you know, Department of Transportation. So you have to connect all the dots, the policy, the governance, and then the technology advancements is really, it's really the awareness and your Congress policy. So it's all interrelated. Everything that we do, it's not just, we have this one technology focus area. We need to break this down. There's too much information out there that we need to keep up. And it's not like we're trying to cover everything. We're just trying to raise awareness, the senior leadership in land, sea, space, cyberspace, and beyond, and beyond.
You've done this a little bit already, but I want you to look into your crystal ball and tell us what you see on the horizon for space commerce in the next 10 to 15 years.
Well, now we have the advent of the cryptocurrency and the digitized economy. I think we're going towards a decentralized system economy. So that means that we're gonna, if we can create values like blockchain, like Bitcoin, and see all these coins are popping up. Right now, we're trying to, we're trying. The world is going towards, because of the internet and the interchanges that are made so easy with, these tokens and these NFTs and all of these cyber currencies. The way that this is really a gaming revolution. Because you're able to, you're playing a game and you're trading money internally on you're buying and trading things, kind of like the barter system. In between, I think we're going to go back towards that because it's going to be more of a decentralized system. Now, it's a policy issue because the banks won't control everything of that. So I think there's going to be a transformation, but we're still a little bit like, we're fighting against the system, right? Because it's status quo versus I see the future as the space economy being driven by, the crypto asset, and even going back to a barter system that's really advanced and visualized, and trying to take away, really I think the more of a understanding what our online digital twin looks like as an identity of everything that we are, our data. Everything is the data is driving everything that we're doing. So that data that is created online or in space is going to be like our print. And we have to really look at those. We have a lot of ethical issues on protection of privacy and data. So that's going to be kind of the next couple of years. That's going to be a big thing, with the privacy issues and. How do we go ahead and make sure that people are not losing their identity online and all that good stuff? Because with all this metaverse, with all the stuff that's happening, with all this convergence of technologies, those are things that the internet had created, but they didn't think about it. So they were, we created this incredible thing, incredible internet, incredible opportunities if we were to get rich. But then you're not thinking about the individual. So we're going to go towards, we're really going to start having those kind of conflicts, which we're having right now. How's Facebook? How's LinkedIn using your personal data? All that stuff. It needs to be ironed out at the policy and governance level. So once you start, Europe is a little bit ahead of that with the GDPR, privacy rules and regulations. We have to go towards that, and I'm surprised that we are still not there with that. So people are starting to understand that it's extremely important, and so for the future, it's going to be exactly that. I see us going faster outside into exploring more planets, creating a circular economy. We're going to see space. We're going to see space hotels and lunar bases pop up. and that's where, the contention is going to be, who's kind of claiming this first. We're going to see some friction going. I hope that we get so powerful with our deterrence that we can just kind of work together, right? And that's what our goal is at the end of the day for space. But that's where I see it. I'm hoping for a peaceful coexistence up there, exploring. There's plenty of space out there,
Sure.
to count and share.
Nino, we are out of time, and I've left questions on the table, so I hope you'll come back and join us again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Nino Marcantonio is founder and deputy director of the Defense Technology Innovation Program, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Ex Terra Podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version of the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other popular podcasting platforms. Be sure to click on subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode of the podcast or any of our other videos. You can always get daily news as well at xterrajsc.com. And one thing more, be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn and follow us on Twitter at xterrajsc. Until next time, I'm Tom Patton. Thanks for joining us.